And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fire on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app, and also goldwatershow.com. If you're looking at the screen, if you're watching this to the right, that's Darren. I'm Jamie. We're here until 2 o'clock this afternoon, and between now and then, we're going to be quite busy. At 12:30, Pat DiMarco, former Gamecock and 10-year NFL veteran. He's going to hop back on with us. A lot to get to with him today. We will obviously talk about the South Carolina coaching staff with Pat DiMarco. We'll get into last night's national championship game. We'll talk to him about the NFL playoffs as well. How about his Buffalo Bills? He was released before the season started because of injury. And so we'll get an update from Pat on what he's hearing out of Buffalo and things like that. It's been a special time up there, certainly. So a lot of fun stuff to get to with my old buddy coming up here in about 25, 30 minutes on our program. We do have Gene Sapakoff ahead today as well at 1:30 this afternoon. We'll talk to him about the national championship. We'll talk to him about the South Carolina staff, and we'll start to kind of peek forward into spring football. Citadel and Charleston Southern are going to be playing before you know it, boys
Yeah,
and
not
girls.
spring football practice. Spring football regular season.
Football, that's right, which I think is great. If they do allow some folks into the ball games this spring, if you're a fan of somewhere else like Carolina or Clemson or some other school, and generally you can't go watch these teams play, maybe if you're able to get down there safely, maybe we'll be able to support some of these other schools here in the state of South Carolina. They certainly deserve it. Going to get to a lot of the national championship stuff here in a moment. We'll talk about that in relation to the playoff as well. Got some hoops to get to. A candidate for the Philadelphia Eagles job that might be a very familiar name to many in this state coming up in a little while as well. 843-321-8893. 843-321-8893. That's our phone number and our text line. Guess what? They're both open.
Yeah, they are.
And you can use them. 843-321-8893 across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Radio JB, and at Darren Goldwater. If you are in the app, check out the season ticket suite. I keep telling y'all that there's a new episode or two, actually, of Gamecock Talk that we're going to be coming out. The reason that I haven't put them out is because of the changes in Columbia with the staff. It's irrelevant to put it out. Soon you're going to have very consistent information coming out of that season ticket suite, but we've been waiting on a lot of this stuff to kind of land and be standing on its own two legs. So once all that is said and done, you can expect a heavy dose of Gamecock Talk. That's part of the season ticket package. And of course, if you miss interviews and things like that around here, Darren cuts them and sends them right to you. So we hope that you all appreciate that in our app. Again, the text line 843-321-8893. And also that is our phone number. And if you are wherever you are watching and listening to our program, those chat rooms that you have access to, you can send us a message there and Darren can put it up on the screen. Maybe you got a question or a comment, go ahead and we'll try to get those questions answered as well, Darren. But good afternoon.
So Alabama better than we thought. Ohio State not as good as we thought.
Alabama's just better.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I thought Ohio State, we've been talking about it all week. I thought that they would be competitive, toe-to-toe. I picked them. Down a couple of defensive linemen. I don't know if it even would have mattered. Devonta Smith was coverable. And you see what happens when you've got 2 or 3 of the best players in college football on one team. How are you going to cover Harris and Smith and Mac Jones running that whole thing? And then you got half-legged Waddle out there still making plays.
Right.
That was impressive. That was really, really impressive.
Yeah, that was really something to see last night in that national championship game. The blowout, 52-24, same score that they beat Texas A&M earlier in the season. A&M, per the AP, has finished 4th in the country. Ohio State's finished 2nd, and they lost by a combined score of 104-48 to Alabama. I mean, that just tells you how good they were this year. Yeah, Darren, I when Devonta Smith went down, and he of course still won the most outstanding player award in the game last night. When he went down, there was nothing in my body that thought, well, that's going to give Ohio State a chance. It's too good. It's too good. And, there is by record, it's not the greatest season in the history of the sport because they lost a couple of games during the season because of COVID. So you only had to play, or you only were able to play 10 games and then
12
and then 11 and then 12, 13. But they played all Power 5 teams, 11 conference games, including the championship game. So they essentially went 11-0 in the SEC and then blew out Notre Dame and Ohio State. And I know that every team this year had COVID issues, and so there's always going to be a little bit of an asterisk by this season as to what happened during the year. But it's really difficult to not look at this team and think this is the greatest national champion we've seen in the history of college football.
So it's hard for me to jump right on that bandwagon because after watching it and watching the season unfold, Alabama was spectacularly good. And like I just said, you can make a good argument that 3 or 4 of the top 5 or 10 players in the country were on that one team. When you're talking about Mac Jones and Devonta Smith, we'll throw Waddle in there and Najee Harris. But it seems to me a little bit of an overreaction, and at least, when you overreact to what you see on a Saturday or Sunday, and on Monday, it's, I got all the answers. I'm going to just pump the brakes a little. And is this the greatest team ever? Because there have been some fantastic teams, and I understand no one's ever gone through a gauntlet of 10, 11, if you count the championship, conference games alone in the SEC conference, and then dominate in the playoffs the way that they did. But it's going to take a lot more examining, breakdown, and research on my end to say, okay, this is the greatest team ever. They're certainly damn good, and they deserve to be at least a part of that conversation. I'll say that. I'll go that far.
Well, here's a stat for you. They played 5 teams this year inside the top 7.
Okay.
Including, Florida was 7th when they played them in the SEC championship game. And those five, you're talking about Florida, 3rd ranked Georgia, A&M 4th, Ohio State 3 or now 2, Notre Dame 4. They scored 228 points. They averaged 46 points per game against those 5 teams. That's remarkable.
It's impressive.
I mean, that is just remarkable.
And when you look at if you tie this into Nick Saban, right? And because not just greatest team ever, but dynasty is getting thrown around, and rightfully so.
It is. It's a dynasty. There's no doubt about that.
So the last 12 years, you've got 6 national championships and a stupid record of 151-15 in the last 12 years. Yeah. And how Saban has changed, right? It used to be, we're going to kill you on defense. We're going to smother you, and then we'll score enough points to win. Now it's whatever. We got better athletes than you, and we are going to light you up. Right. So the evolution is what makes this probably even more impressive than some other dynasties.
Yeah. This is it. I mean, you can't like if somebody tries to even say it's not a dynasty, well, then I would like you to call me and tell me how you define a dynasty. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know that you can define one any other way than this here. I mean, they're the premier program in college football. Nick Saban is the best coach in the history of the sport. And I'm going to read this quote. I love what he said last night because he was asked about having one more national championship now than Coach Bryant. And he said, quote, "If it wasn't for Coach Bryant, we would never be able to do what we did. He was the one that made Alabama and the tradition at Alabama a place where lots of players want to come. And we've been able to build on that with great support. I don't think anybody really compares to Coach Bryant. In the era that he coached, in the era that he won a lot of different ways. He won throwing it. He won playing the wishbone. He won it running conventional offensive formations. And his legacy lasted over a long, long period of time. And I don't know that Nick Saban could say anything better than that. He totally deflected everything back to the Bear. He obviously understands that he's got 7 rings and 6 of those are with Alabama. He understands he's the winningest championship coach ever. He'll never have the most wins in the history of the sport. I don't know that anybody will ever break Joe Paterno's record of that, whether you think that's tainted or not, and he should have lost wins or whatever. He still won all those games. He still won over 400 games. I don't think anybody's going to ever catch that. I just don't.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, but I loved what Nick said last night, and I know that we kind of all here and there would speculate a little bit as the season was unfolding. You know, if he wins it this year, does he go out on top? What? You know how far he would have to fall down the ladder for this team to not be in it every single year? They're not going anywhere.
And does he seem like a guy who's ready to go somewhere?
He's almost 70, right?
I believe so.
He looks 50.
Hey, he looks like he's in great shape because he's running around with those guys all the time. They had their COVID issues too. Remember, Saban had a scare and then actually got it and then navigate through the season the way they did. And yes, I mean, it's just, there's no reason to believe, based on anything you've seen or heard from Saban, that he's ready to go.
Right.
Not only is he not going anywhere, he's about to hire a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, probably Bill O'Brien.
Yes.
Your former head coach at Penn State.
It's a great hire.
You know, they're just gonna plug the next guy in, and he's gonna plug the next guy in who can take advantage of SEC defenses with the personnel that Alabama has, and the personnel that they have is remarkable. You think about Devonta Smith for a second. This kid catches the game-winning touchdown pass against Georgia a few years ago in the national championship game, the 2018 college football national championship. They win that game in overtime. That's when Tua came in and threw it to him. And then a couple of years later, he goes off in the first half. I mean, he had a career in the first half of this game against Ohio State, and then he can't even play in the second half because he's got his finger all banged up. 12 catches, 215 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Bama becomes the first team ever in the BCS or the playoff era to have 2 teammates with 3 touchdowns apiece in a ball game, and him and Najee Harris. And this guy still wins the MVP. I was texting, and I know we're going to talk to Pat here in about 20 minutes. Pat DiMarco and I were texting back and forth last night throughout the game. And I said to Pat, I said, I don't know that in my generation, I'm not going to say in my lifetime because I can't exactly remember every kid that I saw play when I was 4. But in my generation, I'd say over the last 20 years, I hadn't seen somebody this good at the collegiate level at wide receiver.
No, and something that plays into it, and I tweeted this out last night, you know, Texas fans, what are you getting in Steve Sarkisian? A guy who's designing and calling plays for the best player in the country to look wide open. I promised you Ohio State was doing everything in its power to cover Devonta Smith and probably even have, you know, man and a half coverage, if not double coverage on him. And he's looking wide open. That's how good Steve Sarkisian is. That's how good Devonta Smith is. It was, I mean, uncoverable. He was uncoverable. And then whatever happened to his finger, Saban, I guess that it was dislocated. They couldn't pop it back in, but eye-opening. I mean, eye-opening. And there was a number in there. The only guys who have averaged over 15 yards a catch with at least 23 touchdown receptions in a full season, Randy Moss, Devonta Smith.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you know, and he is the next Randy Moss. I'll go ahead and predict that this guy's going to go to the league, and he's going to be as good, if not way better than Randy Moss. I mean, he is really, really good. And you know, we were sitting there, Pat and I texted back and forth last night, trying to discuss, you know, who do these guys remind us of? Because I said to him, I said, look, Najee Harris reminds me of Derrick Henry, but I think he's better than Derrick Henry. I really do. I think he is better than Derrick Henry. It's hard to compare those two right now because Derrick Henry just ran for 2,000 yards in the NFL. So somebody hearing that's like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about where Derrick Henry was at this point in time in his career in an Alabama uniform compared to where Najee Harris is. And I look at Najee Harris and think, oh my gosh, this guy's going to go to the NFL. I mean, some credit is deserved by that Ohio State defense. They did have him bottled up at times last night, and he just ran right through it. And I go back to what G.A. Mankus said on our show on Friday. Look, if you've got great players, any offensive scheme can look good. And I'm not taking away credit from Steve Sarkisian because I think he is just special.
Mm-hmm.
He's just spectacular. He's rejuvenated his career. He's an amazing coordinator. I think he really is going to be great at Texas. But every single play that he calls doesn't work. That doesn't work for anybody. There is not a coordinator in the history of the sport where every single play is the exact right call at the exact right time. So you need to rely on your players to make plays. And last night, Ohio State had him gobbled up a few times, and nope, right through it, first down. And so, and then that's when we got into the conversation about Devonta Smith. And Pat asked me, he said, "Who do you think?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe a younger Deshaun Jackson. But that's the only thing I could come up with." You mentioned Randy Moss. I think it's a better one than what I came up with. I heard somebody else say Marvin Harrison, maybe.
We had a comment on here, Nuke Hopkins, Marvin Harrison, and a good point. Tyler points out, what's Smith's legacy if Waddle doesn't get hurt? And that's a great question. I think it adds to Smith's legacy because he wasn't expected to do this at all. This was Waddle's job. This was his Heisman moment, his Heisman year.
Right.
And then it's Smith who comes through. In some ways, the injury is really what elevated him, not just his numbers.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. And props to Jalen Waddle for even getting in there last night. That was neat to see. Neat to see Dickerson get that snap at the end of the ball game. But I mean, I'm not an Alabama fan, and you're not either. But there's a lot to drool over today when you look back at what they accomplished this year with the players that they had and what Nick Saban has now done. And I mean, this is remarkable. It really is. I would do anything if we could, which we can't. I'd do anything to have last year's LSU team and this year's Alabama team play for a national championship, because I had somebody on the phone earlier say, man, I thought we'd seen the best offense ever in LSU last year, but I'm not so sure anymore. I said, well, you did until this year.
Yeah.
I mean, LSU's offense last year was the best offense we'd ever seen in the history of the sport. I think this one's better.
It looks better. I mean, I can tell you that. And you could see the drop-off in LSU this year. So that adds to what they did last year, losing all those guys, and you can kind of have more respect for it, even though it was, I think, like you said, the greatest offense in college football history. This one was unstoppable. We talked about it yesterday. How many times will either team actually be stopped? It obviously crippled Ohio State that Sermon gets hurt on like the first play of the game, but I'm not sure how much that ended up really mattering.
Yeah.
They still were going to lose the game, and
Right.
They still weren't going to stop Alabama. That offense was virtually unstoppable unless they stopped themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't going to change the outcome of the game. Do I think it could have been closer? I think it probably would have been closer. I think maybe by a touchdown or two, maybe by two. I don't know. When you look at what Ohio State did in the ball game, they actually ran the football pretty well. 29 carries for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns in a national championship game against an Alabama defense is really good. And Master T came in, and I thought he did a nice job. I mean, he had that one big one that he broke for about 30. And then after that, he was really trying to grind for yards. And so, yeah, I think that Trey Sermon certainly would have made a major impact. I mean, he's been the best running back in the country over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, he's run for 600 plus yards total in the last 3 games combined. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, I certainly think that he would have had an impact. I think that would have helped Justin Fields a lot, who was only 17 of 33 for under 200 yards and a touchdown. I think that would have helped him a lot. But maybe a guy or two on defense would have helped Ohio State as well.
Yeah, some of their linemen.
Yeah, it just wasn't going to change it. It just look, here's the thing. Bama scored 52. They could have scored 66.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they didn't do anything the last 20 minutes of the game.
Now, let me say, Roger Hoover, when he was on with us yesterday, he nailed this game. First of all, he said Harris was going to have a big game, and Harris had 3 touchdowns in the blink of an eye. He also said he thinks both teams, but it ended up being more so Alabama, will try to establish a track meet early. And then he called it a cross-country meet in the second half to wind things down. And he said he thought the score would both be in the 50s, but instead it's just Alabama that got there.
Right.
And nailed the entire game plan for Alabama, and then Bama made it work. They executed that thing.
Oh, they did. Yeah, he was right on about that. Roger Hoover joined us yesterday from Tuscaloosa, and he crushed it. Yeah, just a remarkable win last night for Alabama. Here's the thing, too, and we'll come back to this a little bit later. Let's take this conversation in a little bit of a different direction.
Okay.
If you had a playoff that was bigger than 4 games, let's just get this out of the way here, or 4 teams, excuse me. It would not have changed who the national champion was going to be.
No.
Alabama, you could have had every team in football in a playoff, and Alabama was going to win the national championship. They were destined for it. They're the best team in the country from the first game of the year until the final game of the year. So an expanded playoff, people that are saying an expanded playoff somehow would hurt the sport because they saw last night Bama roll through Ohio State. You're looking at this wrong. You're looking at it wrong. Let me give you a different angle to look at this. It's about the platform. It's about meaningful competition at the most exciting in the most exciting time of the year. This past weekend, I could have cared less about any of the teams playing in the NFL. I don't care. I just don't care.
Right.
I'm a fan of football, like following a bunch of guys in the NFL who I care about. Don't have a team in the NFL. But it was the playoffs, and there were some neat storylines going into the playoff, like with the Browns and the Bills and things like that. And I really wanted to see how it would work out. And it's playoff football.
Yes.
Playoff football in January matters in the NFL.
It's good football.
Playoff football would matter in December at the collegiate level. Here's a stat for you. In the NFL, there are 32 teams, right?
Yes.
12 teams out of those 32 make the playoffs every year. This year it's expanded, but in a normal year, 12 teams of those 32 make the playoffs. We all get excited about playoff football. The ratings go up. The average football fan that maybe doesn't follow it as closely throughout the year can't wait to watch the playoffs. You mentioned yesterday maybe Wild Card Weekend might be considered the best football weekend of the year, and it's not because they have the most popular teams playing that time of the year. It's just because it's a great weekend to watch. You might see an upset or two. Generally, Wild Card Weekend does have an upset or two because you have a hot team at the end of the year that made their way into the playoffs.
And there are stakes. I mean, they matter. I mean, there's real legitimate stakes. The game
matters.
Yeah.
How many years have we gone into the playoffs and we all knew that the Patriots are going to win the championship, win the Super Bowl, and they did, but you still watch the playoffs in hopes of seeing an upset or something like that because it mattered.
Yep. 12
of 32 teams. That's 38% of the teams in the NFL go to the playoffs, and the playoffs matter. There's 127 teams at the FBS level in football,
yep.
G5, P5, right? 38% of those teams would be 48 teams in the playoffs. Nobody is asking for that.
No.
Nobody's asking for that at all.
No.
I'd never want to see that. You'd never want to see that. It would be not good for the sport. I've said before 16 is the number. 16% or 16 teams of 127 would be 13% of the teams making the college football playoff. Meaningful football in December. Now, Mike Morgan said this 2 weeks ago on our program. It's not necessarily about the outcome as it is about the entertainment and the process. Like, you don't have to go to the party to take the prettiest girl home. You could go to the party and still have a good time, still spill a drink or two on yourself and have enjoyed the party. Last night was fun. That's what the sport of football has generated for years at the NFL. It's why the playoff generates a level of fun that just doesn't exist through the first 16 weeks. Now, leading up to the playoff, those final 3 or 4 weeks, what do we talk about every week when it comes to the NFL? Oh, this team, man, you got to win this week. If you don't win this week, you're not in contention. They're out of contention. Don't we want that in college football? It's the most meaningful regular season in the country. Don't we want it to mean more?
That, to me, is the biggest proponent point for going all the way out to 16 teams, how much it will strengthen the regular season. And as it's been pointed out, I mean, how often are you going to pay attention to week 6 in the Pac-12 or in the Mountain West or something? Never. You're not, because it doesn't matter. But if there were 16 teams, then it could matter. Then you're talking about, okay, let's use wild card or buy or at large bid, whatever you want to use here. You've got teams all around the country fighting for some of these final spots. And the only way to really do that is to get out to 16. Using the percentage number, to me, 13% is still too much. I mean, that to me isn't enough. I mean, that's not enough of a reward is the wrong term, but it doesn't. The teams who actually deserve it are lessened if you've got 13% is a lot. It's a big number. It's not what the NFL number is.
Right.
But there's 130 teams.
Yeah, right.
So the 13% to me seems a little bit big. So that's where I'm caught between, do I want 8? Do I want 16?
Well,
can we do somewhere in the middle?
Yeah. And so here's the thing, like, I'm not necessarily arguing the 8 and 16 right now. I'm just giving the percentage so people can understand 4 out of every 10 teams in the NFL essentially are going to the playoffs. At the collegiate level, it would be a little bit over 1 out of every 10 teams make the playoff. 13% of 127 if I went to 16. Even if you went to 8, at the end of the day, it's still about providing yourself a better, more entertaining product, more meaningful competition in the final month of the year, which is exactly what you play for. Like, it wouldn't have changed that Alabama would have won the national championship this year. I mean, we can speculate that it might, but it wouldn't. We know that.
Nope.
We all know that. Like, that wasn't going to change. They were going to win the whole thing. But it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the process on the way to that happening. And there are going to be years, and there always are, where there's not this year's Alabama or last year's LSU or a couple of years ago Clemson. Like, there's not always going to be that one team that just – we knew all year long Bama had separated themselves from the rest of the field.
Yes.
I mean, you knew that the first day, didn't
Yes.
it? Like, we just knew. It was like – I mean, when they blew
Bama,
out – when they blew out
Clemson,
A&M, it was
everyone.
like, okay,
Mhm.
all right. It's going to be a long stretch to catch these guys.
Yeah.
We knew that all year. But it doesn't take away the fact that we want to see meaningful football in December and not opt-outs before you play in this bowl game. I mean, hell, you're even in New Year's Six games now where the best players are opting out of games.
Uh-huh.
So how do you prevent that? And like, you're going to eventually get to a point, Darren, we're going to have all these juniors who are going, man, you know, we're 5-4. We have 3 games left. And at best we can go to like the Peanut Bowl. And, you know, I just don't know. I think I'm going to opt out. And, you know, I'm just going to withdraw from school and train for the NFL draft.
Mhm.
There's 3 games left in the season, dude. Yeah, I know, man. I've just done all I can do. It's coming. It's going to continue to go until you stop it. So how do you stop? Well, you have to provide, you have to give them a reason to want to stick around. Not all of them, not all of them at all, but some.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. Alabama certainly was going to win the national championship. I don't care if this was a 50-team playoff. They were winning the national championship.
Sure. Hey, I think I'll be honest. This is crazy. I think there's a couple of NFL teams that Bama could beat right now.
No, I never go that far. I always shoot that conversation.
I agree, but what if they played the Jets?
The Jets would still win.
The Jets are terrible.
Yes, they are. They're awful, and then the Jets could beat them without a coach. I honestly believe that.
No, I think it's the first time I've ever said that, but like watching that last night, I'm like, oh my God,
yeah,
these guys are.
Yeah, they're really good. So even though Alabama was going to win the national championship, the fact that more teams would have a chance to get in, and then as you build this thing through the years, you're going to get that March Madness type Cinderella belief. So even though we know as the season goes along, like realistically, Alabama's going to win. I'll give them a 99.5% shot. But then you got Coastal Carolina here, like, well, maybe we can be a Cinderella. The more the 16 or expanded playoff, whatever number it is, the more that goes, the more belief can sink into these teams that they might be able to do something. And then that impacts the regular season. In terms of opt-outs, the playoffs won't have opt-outs.
No.
I think that's a pretty safe conclusion. But after that, the other bowl games, I don't have a problem with it. However, if you are the type of person that, you know, loves your teammates and it's a tight-knit group, you're probably not doing it. The guys who are doing it are ones who are, number one, going to the NFL, and they know it. And number two, value that over whatever experience they're getting within that locker room.
Yeah.
And if that's your choice, okay, I'm not going to begrudge you your chance of going to the NFL and doing what you want to do. I get it. But, you know, it says something about who you are.
Yeah, I certainly agree. Bama, by the way, didn't have any of them, and it showed because they're really good. 12:29 here on a Tuesday afternoon. Make sure you pick up a cheesesteak if you're heading through West Ashley today. dbscheesesteaks.com for that entire menu, and they deliver. If you're at work listening to our program or watching it, thanks. Enjoy a cheesesteak while you're doing that. Just head to the website, check out the menu, or go to one of your delivery apps like DoorDash or what are the other ones?
Uber
Eats, Post Stamps, whatever it is.
Postmates,
Post Stamps, Gold Jacket, Green Jacket, all of it. They all deliver. And that's where DB's Cheesesteaks can be found. Don't forget the boardwalk fries at DB's Cheesesteaks. We will hit a quick break when we return. 10-year NFL veteran, former South Carolina Gamecock, Pat DiMarco joins us right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Family Bingo Night is back. All 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
You don't think? You don't think? But I don't think you should be butting in when I'm talking to my team. You're my assistant, okay? You're supposed to back me up and go get me juice boxes when I tell you. Now go get me a juice box.
You know who you're talking to.
I'm talking to the juice box guy.
You're crazy.
Now, JB and Goldwater, live in the Low Country.
Go get me a juice box. Hootie and the Blowfish brings us back at 12:30 here on a Tuesday afternoon. Darren, Jamie, and Pat DiMarco, 10-year NFL veteran, former Gamecock, kind enough to hop on today and take a look inside the Gamecocks program. Last night's national championship game. We'll talk about the NFL playoffs and so on and so forth. From Atlanta, Georgia. What's up, man?
What's going on, fellas? Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. How you doing? What'd you think about the game last night?
I made it till halftime, and I figured that was about all she needed to watch. As soon as I saw Devonta Smith score that third touchdown, and then they kind of ran away with it, I decided to get some shut eye. But I mean, quite an impressive first half. I was pretty gutsy performance in the first quarter by Ohio State, coming back-to-back scores after Bama scoring on those 2 drives. I thought there was going to be 100 points there after the first quarter in the game. It was a fun one, though.
Is there anything that could have changed that outcome? I mean, Trey Sermon goes down early, Pat, and, Ohio State had a bunch of guys that weren't able to play, a couple of key guys on the defensive side of the football. Is there anything that could have – I don't know if it would have necessarily changed the outcome, but could this thing have been closer if those guys were able to play in the football game?
Yeah, I think there's always those what ifs. What if he would have played? What if they would have contained Devonta Smith? What if there's so many what ifs in that thing. But I think if a few other things were done in the game, if Alabama didn't get as hot as a start as they had, then it would have been a different game. But I mean, scoring 2 out of their first 3 drives, and then probably 5 of their first 6 or 7 drives scoring. So it was just the way the momentum went.
Yeah, it was a remarkable performance. When you watch this team, we've seen them play all year long, and then last night, of course, putting a stamp on it in the national championship game. 13-0. I mentioned just a little while ago they played 5 teams this year ranked inside the top 7: Georgia, Florida, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. They scored 228 combined points in those 5 games, Pat. That's 46 points per game against the best programs in college football. 13-0, not 15-0. Obviously, COVID this year had an impact on the scheduling, but all Power 5 wins, 11 of them against the SEC, and then Notre Dame and Ohio State. Where in your mind does this Alabama team rank all time when it comes to the greatest champions in the history of the sport?
I mean, I can't go back more than 15, 20 years, but just from my knowledge of the game, I don't want to put any disrespect on some of the old heads out there that grinded it out, but this was a very, very impressive football team to watch, a fun team to watch. They lit up the scoreboard. Their defense made stands when they needed to. I mean, I was looking at something on social media earlier today about their 2017 recruiting class.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, boy.
Oh, my God.
I mean, you got enough talent in that one class to last you at least all 4 years. I mean, most of them left after 3. I mean, that's a really special team. I don't know if we'll see anything like that here again in the next 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, I was seeing comparisons to LSU from the previous year, and I think this Bama team was better. I mean, to play an all-SEC schedule, go undefeated, win the SEC championship game, and then run away with it in your 2 playoff games, it was impressive to watch.
How do you compare this team to what we saw last year from LSU?
I mean, pretty similar from just being able from all sides of the ball. I mean, I think maybe LSU's defense might have been a tad bit better last year. But I think, I mean, the whole package, I mean, I just like JB, me and you were texting a little bit last night during the game. I mean, pick your poison with this Bama defense. It's like, do you stack the box and try to stop Najee Harris? Or do you play cover 2 and just try to keep everything underneath? Like, what do? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So it's a tough team to stop right there.
I was saying to Jamie a little while ago, I was like, when you're watching this offense, it's like 3 or 4 of maybe the 5 or 10 best players in college football are on the same side of the field for the same team. And that makes it even that much tougher just to cover those guys. But just the question that keeps popping into my head, how much of Devonta Smith regularly getting open was him? How much of it is Sarkisian in the plays? Because there are times when Ohio State didn't look like they were covering him, and I promise you they were doing their best.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to Sark. He does so much great stuff in the motion game and getting formations and out leveraging the defense and just getting advantageous looks. The crazy thing is you look at, what do you have, 12 catches or 11 catches last night, whatever it was. I bet only 3 of them were caught further than 10 or 15 yards down the field. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of bubble screens that he took for 15, 20 yards, some quick slants, some RPOs that he just creates separation. And then when the dude has the ball in his hands, he's special. He's explosive. He's a smaller, probably more long speed version of Julio Jones, a guy that I experienced that catches the ball and you kind of hold your breath like, oh boy, is he going to take it to the house this play or not?
Pat DiMarco joining us here at 12:38 on Tuesday afternoon. Yeah, you and I were texting back and forth last night. Who do we compare Devonta Smith to? Who do we compare Najee Harris to? We were talking about, another former Alabama guy, Derrick Henry, in that comparison. And I mentioned you maybe a young Deshaun Jackson, and Darren mentioned earlier Randy Moss. I think that might be the best one I've heard for Devonta.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see Randy do as much like bubble scrumming. That's a new part of the game too. Is like the bubble screen, the RPOs, getting the ball in your hands super quick. I mean,
great point.
Randy just literally outran every corner and threw his hand up and was like, "Yo, just toss that thing as far as you can, and I will get it."
That's a great point. By the way, quick trivia. No, don't answer this, Pat. You want to know who the? All right. This is to Darren and anybody who's watching and listening. Everybody should know the answer to this. You know who the last SEC East coach team was to beat Nick Saban in Alabama, right?
Is it a Spurrier?
Yeah, it was 2010 Spurrier. You know who was on that team, right?
This guy on the phone.
This guy.
That was a fun game. That was I remember getting off the bus doing a little Gamecock walk right in front of the stadium. A little different then than it is now. I think it's a lot more ramped up now. But I remember my parents came to every single home game that I ever played in during my South Carolina time. And I remember my mom whispering in my ear, "Tonight's going to be a good night." It was something, the Black Eyed Peas or whatever. It was a song that just came out, and God knows how my mom knew that song. She must be listening to the radio, but she whispered that in my ear, and it kind of like later after the game, after we beat them, my mom mentioned it to me. She goes, "I had a dream last night that you guys were going to do this." So it was pretty cool. I remember being at the Flint's condo afterwards. It was Columbia was rocking. Columbia, I can't wait to watch Beamer get this thing back and get Columbia back to the way it used to be. I mean, it's a special, special place.
Yeah, I remember being at Flint's condo after that as well. I remember part of it. I don't remember the rest of it, but it was as a matter of fact, I went home that night. I remember everybody asked me, "Man, what'd you do last night to celebrate?" I said, "I had to go home." That's what I did. After I left the Flints, that was enough of a celebration for me. Speaking of South Carolina, we'll kind of move this there. You mentioned Shane, and this staff is almost complete, Pat. Still one more on-field hire to be made, and then he'll kind of shift his attention to some of the off-the-field hires, some of the behind-the-scenes type roles, whether they're going to be analysts or player development positions and things of that nature. But yesterday we were able to see some press conferences. I went back last night and watched them all in their entirety, or I should say yesterday evening, because Darren and I were on the air. And there is something that I've noticed here, Pat, that has a similarity to what you played under with Coach Spurrier. And there's been a little bit of a gap between, obviously, with Will Muschamp. But when Steve was there, you had guys, not everybody, but a lot of guys on that staff from this state who really, truly cared about this program. Sean Elliott, Shane Beamer, we know his story now, and back then it meant as much to him. But Shane, Ellis Johnson, a South Carolina guy, and then you plugged it where you could with the best coaches that were available and had a really good staff. Shane has done the same thing. Again, he's done this exact same thing, and we saw a lot of these press conferences yesterday. Justin Stepp told a story about running around as a kid wearing a Robert Brooks jersey, and Sterling Sharp and all these things.
That was special, man. I think this entire staff, it's going to be fun to watch them develop these guys and pour into them. It's, I think Shane's done a heck of a job. From guys like Eric Kimmery, who wore the garnet and black, to guys like Mike P, who played in the NFL for a long, long time. He's done such a good job of getting guys around him that he trusts and that he knows will work their tails off, recruit their tails off, and come in and give everything they got to this university. It's I'm really excited to watch this whole thing shape out.
Marcus Satterfield said something yesterday. He was asked about his offensive philosophy, and he said, "Look, some guys will get up here and they'll say, well, this is what we're going to do," and he basically redirected his comments to personnel, and they're going to try to get it all figured out. But they also have mentioned multiple times that he's going to bring a lot of the Brady or Matt Rule stuff he's learned, and they're going to try to combine the Shane Beamer, Lincoln Riley type stuff from Oklahoma. It's hard to ask you about personnel and how all that will interact and weave itself through, because we don't know what personnel is going to look like just yet. But when you hear comments like that, what comes to mind for you for the future of Gamecocks offense?
I think an emphasis, especially in today's game, is you got to plan on trying to score 30 points. The NFL had its highest scoring year ever in the history of the NFL, and I think college football was probably right around close to that as well. So it's the name of the game is scoring points. So from guys like Rule and Shane Beamer at Oklahoma, like these guys, that's where they kind of made their heydays, lighting up the scoreboard. So I see him spreading the ball out. I see him. A lot of it depends on personnel and what your quarterback can do and what your offensive line can do. There's a lot of stuff. Obviously, Carolina has a heck of a running back, so they can rely heavily on that to get the box stacked and then open up the receivers down the field. It's I'm with Satterfield on him saying that, there's a lot of things that we could potentially do, and we'll figure it out as we get to practice and watching these guys work and seeing what they're good at. And you want to put your guys in the best position possible to succeed and do what they're good at, whether that be, getting in 21 personnel, which includes the fullback, which is quite the position to play, and pounding the ball, or whether it's spreading it out, not even playing a tight end and running four wide and getting on the edge, kind of like what Bama did last night. Whatever your team can do best to score these points is what you got to do.
When you look back at this 2020 season, 2-8 for South Carolina, and it just felt throughout the year like the only thing they could do was run the football with Kevin Harris successfully. I mean, Shi Smith certainly flashed throughout the year. He was magnificent for them, and Nick Muse had moments and things like that. But when you look back at this offense, was there more, do you think? I mean, now that Mike Bobo's moved on now, I'm not trying to necessarily throw him under the bus, but do you think there was more that could have been done with that offense, or do you think they really did the best they could do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the players that were there personally, so I don't want to bash anybody, but I mean, it didn't seem like they were as creative as they could have been.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, bubble screens and tunnel screens and all that stuff is good in moderation and on certain play calls and in certain situations, but when you got to rely that heavily on the run, I mean, like converting on third down, like that's, if you got a good run game and you gain 4, 5, 6 yards on first down, 2nd and 4 to 3rd and 4, whatever you do, like you should be able to convert these 3rd and shorts. That's the name of the game, is stay on the field, let your defense rest, change the field position. I mean, there's so much to this game that you got to win situational football, and converting on third down, especially if you have such a good running game to get you ahead of the chains, is pivotal. And South Carolina didn't do that as well. They should have last year, I thought.
Pat DiMarco, 1246 here on a Tuesday afternoon. Pat, when you were at South Carolina, the 4-2-5 defense was alive and well under Ellis Johnson, the spur position.
It was good.
Yeah, it was very good. And it appears a return to that system is in store with the hire of Clayton White coming from Western Kentucky as the new defensive coordinator for the Gamecocks. Shane did say they had some competition in trying to get him here, but they got him here. And it looks like where that's headed. He did say, though, we'll take a look at personnel and we'll go from there. Here's what we do know. They are going to return pretty elite guys at the defensive end position. You got Jordan Birch coming back. You got your first teamer and J.J. Enigbare coming back on the other side as well. And we'll see how the rest of it kind of fits in. 4-2-5, for folks that don't understand, that's 5 members of the secondary, 2 linebackers, and 4 up front, although they don't all have to have their hand on the ground. When you practiced against that in Columbia, and again, you went up against really elite guys. And by the way, this is before Clowney got there as well for Pat. But you went up against some elite guys. What type of challenges does a 4-2-5 defense present?
Well, I mean, when you think of this type of defense, you're losing a linebacker. So if you're going against somebody who's going to run 12 personnel, 2 tight ends or 2 running backs back there, you're giving up a little bit of a size advantage, but you have the speed and you have so many different blitzes and so much different coverages that you can run from that 4-2-5 because you have an extra secondary guy. And I mean, during my time in Carolina, we called it the spur position. I'm sure it'll be a very similar name with Beamer being back because he works specifically with those guys. But we had guys like Darian Stewart, Antonio Allen, DJ Swearinger, Devontae Holloman. Those were the guys that were playing that extra linebacker, nickelback position. And I mean, those were some of the most talented physically, but also mentally. I mean, these guys had to know their run fits against base personnel. They also had to know coverage schemes. Am I buzzing? Am I the curl flat player? Am I taking off to the middle of the field if we're running Tampa 2 or something like that? I mean, there's so much behind this defense that it's going to be exciting. But this it's definitely, if you play that spur position, you got to have a little bit of an attitude with you because it's not necessarily a defensive back position. It's I'm going to take on a tight end. I'm going to take on a fullback in the run game. I'm going to have to. I got action away from me. I'm going to have to fall back in the B gap, and I better be able to close that distance. So a lot of football stuff that I'm sure will bore you guys, but it's really going to be fun to watch them and how they transition it and put it into action.
How much of that 4-2-5 compared to any of the other, base defenses, how much of it is up to the guys on the field to read and react, and how much is basically set in stone in terms of the play call?
Oh, I mean, with motions and shifts and flashers and guys sending, I mean, the run game nowadays there's so much eye candy to it that it's not as much of, line up. We got unbalanced right or unbalanced left or whatever it is, 3x1, 2x2, and just run it at you. There's a tight end who's off the ball who's flashing back to cut the backside defensive end. So now there's 2 extra gaps on the backside. I mean, there's so much eye candy. There's a reverse guy coming just to hold your eyes, just to bring that nickel with him to soften the edge. I mean, it's knowing your roles, it's being gap sound, and it's, something that I missed on earlier that's part of this 4-2-5 defense is being really good up front, having your front four,
right,
being able to trust your defensive end that they're going to set the edge, that your 3 technique or your shade is going to potentially 2 gap or take on, not let that center get up to the play side linebacker. I mean, the whole defense, it's a lot of rules. It's a lot of gap integrity, especially when it comes to the run game. But it's also an attitude. It's a 1-2. It's knowing my angles. It's knowing my gap, and it's attacking the football. So I'm sure Beamer's going to be all about taking the football away. That's kind of the name of the game nowadays. If you have a positive turnover ratio, your percentages of winning go up like 15 or 20%. So I'm sure that's going to be something they're going to harp on a lot on the defensive side, is taking the ball away.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is we talked about some of this throughout the season, Pat. I think I might have had one of these conversations with you, but when I would look at and I'm not any expert, but in any stretch of the imagination, just going back to when guys like you played that era, that style of defense that was here, and then looking at personnel and what we saw out there this year, it just seemed at times like they were trying to find a way to get as many members of the secondary on the field as they could. They could never figure out what the best 4 or 5 looked like back there. And I always thought it was kind of a shame that Jordan Birch didn't get more playing time, especially as the season went on. I get the first game or 2. But this kid was certainly talented enough to play. And J.J. Enagbare, as great of a year as he had at 6.5 sacks and didn't play the whole season because of injury, at times felt like he was maybe even a little bit out of place. So I kind of thought throughout the year, man, this would look – a 4-2-5 would just maybe fit this personnel a little bit better. And we'll see. We'll see how that works out moving forward. You mentioned the spur. Let me give a little background to this real quick. So somebody that DJ Swearinger this morning tweeted, just caught up with Coach T. Gray, which is Torian Gray, whom was last night hired officially, I guess, as the Gamecocks defensive backs coach from Florida. Said, just caught up with Coach T. Gray, who coached me in Washington. He's smart and a great DB coach. He'll have our South Carolina DBs back to where we want them. I have total confidence in that. I had 9 picks in 2 years under Gray. He coaches the game from the neck up. What type of that, when you hear that statement from a guy like DJ, who has as much pull as anybody, I think, as any of the alumni right now, what does that mean for this program and that position group?
I mean, I think Swag hit the nail on the head. Is you got a guy who's, I mean, especially in a position that is of need at South Carolina right now, that you got a guy that's going to come in and going to teach them the game, not just from their own, not just from a take care of myself standpoint, but a wholesome, know what the safety's doing, know what the corner's doing. We're all working this together. I mean, that's what you want in a coach. You want to understand, okay, why am I making sure this receiver doesn't get outside release on me? Where are my eyes at? I know I got help. I know I got help behind me. I know, the backer's buzzing out, so I can sit on this route. There's, I mean, a wholesome view of the defense and a wholesome view of an offense is what's really going to have you be successful, so you can trust the guys, especially the guys behind you. When you're talking about corners, trusting your safeties, they're going to be there to help you. So, I mean, yes, DJ knows better than me on the new DBs Coach Gray. So, I mean, I 100% trust DJ. He's one of the smartest football players I've ever been with. And he seems to always be in the right place at the right time, and that's not by mistake. It's because he prepares like it.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and you hit it. You had said something there that I think is a key word for Swearinger. Everybody calls him Swag, and there's a reason for that. There's no doubt. If anybody can get 45 penalty yards in the span of about 15 seconds, you're doing something special, like he did against Arkansas back in 2013. However, he was an incredibly smart football player for South Carolina and throughout his career in the NFL. One more quick question on the staff. I do want to get to the NFL playoffs with you and your Buffalo Bills, by the way. We're still waiting on one final hire as the offensive line coach. We'll see how that works out. Travell Wharton has been a hot name in this. I've done some checking around, and am not personally prepared to say anything that's concrete on that front, but we'll see. I would expect something maybe today coming out on that. You know this. I mean, you know this. You know this program inside and out. You know Shane Beamer very well. You know Kimry. You've known Eric Kimry a long time. You know I don't know how much you know some of the other coaches on this staff and things like that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know the South Carolina football program, Pat, as well as anybody. We've talked about. I'm not asking you to get into specifics with names and stuff like that. We've talked about off-field roles Shane has and trying to fill those things with qualified former players and stuff like that. Maybe expanding the staff in other areas to make this a more successful program. Do you have any sense of like what some of that might look like? Like where has the sport shifted in the last 10 years and what we don't see behind the curtain inside the ops building and things like that? What are things that have become much more relevant in college football that Shane Beamer is maybe trying to bring into this program?
Oh, I mean, just from my time at South Carolina, from the beginning to end, just from my 4 years, I think something that really ticked up was sports science and kind of taking care of your body. It's not about, I mean, they just hired the new head strength coach in Luke Day, and I hear great things about him. I hear he's very innovative and wanting to do new things and not being completely programmed like everybody's doing the same things, but the quarterbacks are doing specific stuff. The kickers are doing specific stuff. You're not just training everybody to train somebody. You're training everybody with an intent and a purpose to go out there and play football. I mean, that's what these guys are here for. So I think the sports science world is like off the charts right now with data tracking and technology. And I mean, the amount of money that a lot of these schools and organizations are putting into their training room and all this high tech equipment. It's, I mean, just from that stance, I could talk to you for 20 or 30 minutes about some of the stuff that they did in Buffalo, which is showing their success, and some of the innovative stuff that they've implemented to really take their program up to the next level. That's just, I guess that's just one of them. But it's, you know, at the end of the day, like Carolina football, especially with the new regime and coming off a bad season, it's going to be about putting the past behind you, looking forward, and getting to work. And I think that's Beamer's message is welcome home. And if you're here, you're part of the family, and let's get to work.
Hey, real quick follow up on that. When you hear analyst roles, Pat, what are they analyzing? What are those? How can one team have 20 analysts and one team have 4? Like what are they analyzing?
Well, I think it's like an analyst role is like a glorified coach without coaching, if that makes any sense. I think it's an extra set of eyes. It's an extra set of film breakdown. It's an extra set of like helping out with the install. It's just more expertise in the game. I mean, wasn't Ellis Johnson just recently an analyst at Carolina? Yeah. I mean, you get these guys that have been there, done that, have seen the kitchen sink. I mean, those are guys that you want around and guys that can go up there and grind. I mean, it's an analyst is essentially just another coaching spot. And I think South Carolina used to have, I think 4, and then under Muschamp, they came back down to 2. And I think Beamer's trying to get some more guys back in the building, especially former players and guys that have been around the program before. So it'll be really exciting. You know, I personally, I'm hoping that he gets a bunch more Gamecocks around there, guys that bleed the garnet and black and that want this program to get back to its prominence. And a couple guys I've spoken to that are friends of mine, former players, have said they've spoken to Shane about potential roles. I know guys like Darian Stewart, who was at the Gamecock facility not too long ago, has been in contact with Shane. And several others. I know a lot of guys want to get back. I mean, it's a really exciting place right now. It's there's a lot of buzz coming to South Carolina and Gamecock football, and Shane's doing an incredible job getting guys excited. Hopefully the recruits come and we can really turn this thing around. Yeah, no question. Really good stuff there, Pat. And you mentioned Ellis, you know, a guy who's respected immensely in this program and in this state. And it'll be interesting to see if, I mean, Shane and Ellis know each other quite well. Maybe Ellis pops in from time to time. He did run the 4.25 quite well in Columbia
maybe he's a guy that they'll lean on just for an extra set of eyes and a couple extra ideas to implement moving forward with Clayton White as the new defensive coordinator.
I think they have another analyst that they're not going to have to pay too, and Frank Beamer.
Yes.
Yeah. He's pretty talented guy. I would think
he's seen a little bit like that kitchen sink you were mentioning.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Just get Steve and Ellis and Frank, and they'll just bring them out. Well, hey, Beamy, how you doing there? Oh, Ellis, how you doing?
This we'll call Joe Gibbs too. Let's bring all the old guys back there.
How you boys doing? All right.
I mean, shoot, they got a guy like Connor Shaw there too, who's
hit that guy.
Probably the best quarterback to ever play at South Carolina. And I know they're going to have him be more involved in the football side while still keeping his player development role. I mean, he's got so much wisdom at the position. Did he ever lose a game in Columbia, South Carolina?
No.
I mean, so that's the guy you want in that quarterback room that's going to build confidence in those guys. That's going to show them how it's done and why you're doing it specific ways. I mean, they need more guys like Connor back. They need guys like Darian Stewart. They need, whenever DJ Swearinger's done, they need guys like DJ Swearinger. Travell Wharton, former Gamecock. That would be an incredible guy to get back in the offensive line role. Byron Jaredou I think I saw he's on staff at the weight room now. So, hats off to Shane. Hopefully he gets a couple more, and they can get this thing rolling.
I hope so. All right, before we let you run, bud, the Bills are rolling. I know you're so excited for Buffalo, and I know there's a piece of you that is just like, oh my gosh. Obviously, you got hurt before the year started, and you've had to watch a lot of this or all of this from afar, and they got another one coming up on Saturday night. They've got the Ravens at 8:15 on NBC, and I know you'll be tuned into that. By the way, they're 2-point favorites in that game against Baltimore. Real quick before I actually ask you about Buffalo, I know we've rolled past the top of the hour here, but I don't care. If let's say they knock on wood, I don't want to jinx anybody. Let's say they go on and win the Super Bowl. Will you get a ring?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I was IR. I was on IR for 4 or 5 weeks at the beginning of the year with my neck thing. And it was more, they wanted to put me on the IR, but I wanted to come home and see my family, especially with COVID and Kirsten being pregnant. There was a lot of me that was like, hey guys, let's find something out that you guys want to do that will get me back home. I don't know if I stayed on IR there all year, if it would have been different. Either way, I wouldn't have changed it. Been home with my family for all football season, pouring into my kids, loving on my kids, taking care of my beautiful wife. So that's the stuff that's important. But man, I hope they take this thing home. Sean deserves it. Brandon Bean deserves it. Buffalo, the city of Buffalo deserves it. All my buddies up there, I've been in constant contact with them, giving them some of my knowledge from my Super Bowl run in Atlanta and kind of giving them pointers on how to navigate all the news, all the press conference and all the positive press, because Buffalo is a pretty quiet place usually, and now there's a lot of buzz going on. So it's a lot different now than it was my 3 years there. So I think the big thing is, and Sean McDermott, the head coach there, preaches it all the time, be humble and hungry. A lot of gratitude and grateful for all the things they went to. They're crediting that the Hail Mary against Arizona to a lot of their success, and the defense really picking it up after the bye week. It's, I sure hope they go ahead and bring this thing home. It'd be so great for the city of Buffalo and so great for that organization to win the Super Bowl.
Do you know anybody that's jumped on tables up there? Is that really as normal as it looks?
Well, besides my wife, no, I'm just
Hey, with your injury, I hope you're not trying to do any of that stuff. That wouldn't be a good thing. Don't do that.
No, with my neck and my shoulders and how beat up I am now, I'm on the Peloton bike. I'm doing some fun, keep myself moving around workouts. I'm rocking the dad bod. It's all good.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, baby.
Let me ask you about Andre Roberts. Obviously it's close to home here at the Citadel. I was a Citadel radio guy for his final 2 years. And actually his agent slept at my house. He's a good childhood friend of mine when he was down here to finalize stuff with him. Man, Andre's turned into one hell of a pro, huh? The importance he serves for the Bills right now.
Oh, he is one of the best. He's one of the best teammates too. I mean, from a return guy, as soon as when free agency opened, I was actually in Miami, Florida with him at the NFL Board of Representatives meetings. And I was like, oh, you're a free agent. Oh, I know Buffalo's looking for a returner. And I know, we were really close to breaking a few long ones last year. We didn't have the guy with the top end speed like you have. I was like, man, it'd be quite a good fit. And he's like, oh, I think I'll let my agent handle all that. And kind of like gave me a wink, like, okay, I see what you're saying without saying it. But no, Dre's awesome. Dre's came in there and completely turned around our special teams program from, I think we were third in the league last year in kickoff return average. Punt return average, we were second or third too. Dre's been to the Pro Bowl, I think, the last 3 years. Just his attitude and his demeanor. He goes about the game the right way, plays it like a competitor is supposed to play it. And not to mention, he does all that stuff, but if you also watch these games and a receiver's in it has to go crack a defensive end, guess who it is? It's Andre Roberts. He's willing to do it all. So special guy, heck of a golfer.
Really?
Played a couple times up in Buffalo. Yes, he's a 1 or 2 index, I think.
Wow.
He's a really good stick.
He's traveled the world to play golf.
Really?
Yeah, him and Larry Fitzgerald are good buddies. And
Yeah.
I know they play a bunch in the off season from their time in AZ together. But Dre, I hope I'm sure Dre's going to bust a big one here in this playoff run, and I hope he gets the Super Bowl. Man, he deserves it.
Wow, I didn't know. He's a year ahead of you, isn't he, Pat? Wasn't he 1 year ahead?
Yeah.
Of you? Okay.
Yep, 1 year. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Dre. He's just the ultimate pro.
That's really cool.
Yep.
Really cool. All right, so we'll make our official picks. I think Buffalo wins the Super Bowl.
How are you going to go differently with Pat on the phone right here?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. Hey, did you ever get a chance to? Have you ever had a chance to meet Jim Kelly?
Yeah, I met him a couple times. I played in his charity golf event. My 3 years up in Buffalo. Met him several times in the building. Coach McDermott did a really good job of bringing. I think something that Shane wants to do is bring former players in who have been there, done that, to come and talk to the team and say. I mean, just Jim's presentation was like what Buffalo means to him, why he still lives there, why his foundation is still centered around there, his family life and all that stuff, and how important Buffalo is to him. So, yeah, I mean, Jim's a rock star. He's you walk around Buffalo and people know you play with the Buffalo Bills shirt on. They talk about Jim Kelly all the time up there.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, we talk about you a lot around here, and so do all the Gamecocks out there, Pat. And as always, I really appreciate it. Pat and I have been buddies for quite some time, so it's very comfortable to get him on and just chat about football. And we'll do it again here whenever we can, sometime soon. This staff is going to be complete in Columbia before you know it, so I hope folks will keep their eyes peeled over the next couple of days. I think Shane's going to have a couple of nice announcements people will be fairly satisfied with coming your way. And as always, Pat, we really appreciate it, buddy. I know we kept you a little bit longer than I said we would, but thanks so much.
You got me out of putting the 2-year-old to sleep. Appreciate it, guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anytime,
That's
man.
what I'm here. Hey, mine are almost 2. I get it. Anything to get me out of it. Thanks, Pat. Talk soon, bud.
All right. See you guys.
There you go. Pat DiMarco, former Gamecock, 10-year NFL veteran, and soon to be Super Bowl champion.
Hopefully.
Now they're going to win it. I'm a believer
because you got the tie of your buddy Pat DiMarco and your adopted buddy from Wyoming, Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting. I gotta ask him to get Josh to sign something for my in-laws.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting about that. All right, so we're way past due. So we're gonna do what we do every once in a while around here: play the national anthem right around 1:10 in the afternoon. So hang tight. When we return, FCS spring football headed your way. We got some hoops to get to you. The final AP top 25 is out. There's a big name up for the Eagles job we want to tell you about. You'll probably be familiar with that guy. And Gene Sapakoff at 1:30 as well. JB and Goldwater Show driven by Stokes Volkswagen. We'll be right back. What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risk their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Show. Live, loud, and online.
48 minutes to go here in hour 2. Welcome back. The JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control, McFaddenPestControl.com, in business for well over 40 years in the Low Country of South Carolina. If you're in the Tri-County area and you don't have anybody protecting your home, they'll do it, and they'll do it better than all. That's why they've been doing it for over 40 years. McFaddenPestControl.com. Your mosquitoes and your termites and your household pests, the quarterly, all that stuff. They do everything for our home, and they should do it for yours. McFaddenPestControl.com. Just check them out right there on their website. If you're watching, look to the right of your screen. That's Darren. Look to the left. That's me. And we've got another 45 minutes or so left in our program. Gene Sapakoff, he's ahead. In about 15 minutes, we'll talk to him about the national championship, some of what has transpired in Columbia, and a few other little topics and nuggets to get to, including the Masters. They had a nice announcement today of what is to come in Augusta, where he just was.
That's my point. It's crazy. The Masters just ended, and we got commercials over the weekend in the NFL games about the Masters coming up. And it's like, oh, all right, it's back already.
Those are the best commercials, too.
The music.
They are.
It just gets you.
They're just the best commercials, man. By the way, Coastal Carolina, their final ranking in the AP Top 25, which I'm going to give you here in just a moment. gives Jamie Chadwell a $200,000 bonus. And so this year he's well up over $500,000. Of course, he also just signed a new deal with Coastal that's scheduled to keep him there through 2027. We'll see if that's going to actually happen or not.
That's nice for now. That's good.
But certainly good news for Jamie Chadwell. So congratulations to him. Here is that AP top 25, the AP top 25. Alabama, number 1, shocker. Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3 with 2 losses ahead of 9-1 A&M. How about that? Notre Dame is at 5, Oklahoma at 6, Georgia at 7, Cincinnati at 8, Iowa State 9, and Northwestern, they check in at number 10. BYU at 11, Indiana at number 12. We'll have to go way back to figure out if Indiana's when the last time they finished 12th or higher was.
Oh, there's a
maybe never.
The way too early top 25s for next year. I saw one that has Indiana 10.
Wow.
A preseason 10 for Indiana football.
Based on Michael Penix Jr. returning at quarterback,
yeah.
obviously.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Florida at 13, Coastal. There you go, at 14. How about the Louisiana Raging Cajuns? 15. Iowa at 16, Liberty at 17, North Carolina at 18, Texas at 19. And then 20 through 25, Oklahoma State, Southern Cal, Miami, Ball State, San Jose State. And speaking of Buffalo, the Bulls, not the Bills. So there you go.
Interesting that BYU is 3-4 spots ahead of Coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
Just pointing that out. They lost to Coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the AP. So I don't know how much that really matters.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, basically the top few spots are going to be the playoffs, and then after that, so be it.
Yeah. There you go. Also, you can tweet that. Think about this. I know that we are one day now removed from the completion of the college football season, the FBS level.
Yes.
We're going to get to the FCS part here in just a few minutes. We're one day removed, but it's not too early to peek ahead to the start of 2021.
Yeah.
And 2021's opening weekend sets up quite nicely, actually. Here is your list of notable games for the first weekend of college football later on this year. Saturday, September the 4th, Sunday, September the 5th, Monday, September the 6th. Go ahead. Anybody that's got a wedding planned for Labor Day weekend, cancel it. And here you go. Alabama and Miami in Atlanta on Saturday, the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. That's 1 of 2. Kansas State, they're at Stanford. That's a notable game that's out there as well. Of course, Georgia, Clemson, and Charlotte that Saturday. We all know about that one. Boise State at Central Florida on Saturday, September the 4th. An interesting matchup.
And the new head coach for Boise.
That's right. How about this one? The Texas Longhorns will open the season with a new head coach themselves. That is Steve Sarkisian. They'll welcome Billy Napier in Louisiana to town on September the 4th.
Don't lose, Sark.
Wow.
Don't lose.
If Billy Napier is still the coach there, we'll see. LSU, they'll travel to UCLA and Chip Kelly. Now, you might think, well, UCLA has been terrible.
They got much better this year.
They got much better this year under Chip Kelly. Yes, they did. And LSU got much worse. So we'll see how that shakes out as well. On Sunday, September the 5th, an old ACC matchup. Not really, but just for 1 year. Notre Dame at Florida State. To open the year. Florida State just took in a bunch of transfers, including 2 from South Carolina, and Jamie Robinson and Keir Thomas.
And remember, prior to taking in that haul of transfers, they got Mackenzie Milton.
That's right.
To run their show at quarterback.
But it's very simple to see what Mike Norvell is doing. He is just going to find the best transfers he can and bring them into Tallahassee and get this thing fixed as quick as possible.
Yeah, fix that locker room, fix the spots you got, and move on from there.
And then on Monday, September the 6th, that is Labor Day, Louisville and Ole Miss will play game 2 of the Chick-fil-A kickoff series in Atlanta. A couple of other notables on following weekends. On Saturday, September the 11th, you've got Oregon at Ohio State. Remember this year they were supposed to play that game?
That's what I've been thinking about as you've been reading off this list. Like, man, I missed those. There were a ton of really strong early weekend games, just cross-conference type games that we didn't get this year.
And that was one. That game was supposed to be in Eugene this year, but next year's matchup setting up in Columbus on September the 11th. This is an interesting matchup for Tennessee, though. They're going to welcome Pittsburgh to town on September the 11th. That's an odd matchup for whatever reason this game was scheduled. And I do think it'll be a good early test for both teams in both ACC and SEC programs there. And then also, speaking of the SEC, you've got Texas going to Arkansas on September the 11th.
Oh, old school matchup there.
Yeah, Sarkisian is going to walk into hosting the Louisiana Raging Cajuns in an upstart Arkansas program on the road in Fayetteville to start his tenure with the Longhorns.
And
it's interesting. A couple of very tricky games there.
Who was it? I'm scrolling back through. Grover pointed out when we were talking about Sarkisian before, lose one game in your second season, straight onto the hot seat. Texas takes pride in their hot seat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Sark, year one, he could be on that hot seat. Like, boom.
The thing is they're two like very tricky games. Like they're notable programs who had, Arkansas didn't have a good year, but they had a better year than people thought. Getting it turned around, and that game's going to be in Fayetteville. Huge opportunity for Arkansas to make a statement early in the year. And of course, you got Louisiana, and they finished in the top 25. So. Also on September the 11th, you got Washington at Michigan. So keep an eye on that one as well. And then on down the line, Michigan State at Miami, September the 18th. Nebraska at Oklahoma on September the 18th, an old rivalry there. Oklahoma State, they'll travel to Boise to take on the Broncos on the blue turf on Saturday, September the 18th. West Virginia plays host to Virginia Tech on the 18th as well. And how about this one?
That should be a rivalry that is played more often.
It should be played more often. I agree. And then how about this one? I know you're excited. Auburn is at Penn State Saturday, September the 18th. That's a very interesting matchup.
Penn State was supposed to go to Blacksburg this year. That was one of the games that got wiped off the slate. Some of the preseason projections for next year, I've seen Penn State at 10. I've seen Penn State at 22. But at least there's some optimism around Penn State, new offensive coordinator.
Oh, they have one of those at Auburn, too. He just left South Carolina, Mike Bobo.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, certainly optimism around that program. And then final one I'll mention here, Saturday, September the 25th. Remember, these are notable non-cons, Notre Dame and Wisconsin in Chicago at
is that going to be at Wrigley?
I think it's I think is it a Wrigley or Soldier Field? It's one of those. I'll have to go back and check.
Yes.
I'll have to go back and check. But anyways.
Be awesome if it's at Wrigley.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. No doubt.
I wonder if Wrigley's big enough to actually, because when you see like the bowl game at Yankee Stadium, the Pinstripe Bowl. I mean, you got to lay out the football field in such a way. I wonder if Wrigley's dimensions are even big enough for it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Probably Soldier Field then. I'll have to go back and check, but it'll be in Chicago. Week 1 of FCS spring football is 1 month away from tomorrow. Saturday, February the 13th is the first game of the spring football schedule at the FCS level. It's McNeese State at Tarleton State. They'll get it all kicked off, and then week 2, the following week, then you start getting all the SoCon guys and the Big South guys. Pretty much the rest of the schedule starts to really fill itself in. I know South Carolina State plays on February the 20th. They play host to North Carolina Central, and you got Sunday games as well. They've done everything they could to fit all of this in. They've got Saturday games, Sunday games throughout the spring. Mercer and Wofford, a good one that weekend as well. On Saturday, February the 20th. So spring football is upon us. It's a real thing. I'm going to say what I said earlier. I would encourage folks, if you're a Clemson fan, a Carolina fan, whoever fan, maybe you go watch your teams play throughout the fall and you don't get much of a chance to see the CSUs and the Citadels of the world. If they are going to let fans in, it'll be a small number, but if you can get a ticket, go support these programs. They're going to need it.
Look, I spent years around the Southern Conference. I spent years around the Division II ranks as well. There's good football in a lot of different places. So go support them. Go check it out. The Citadel may have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. I think the way they kind of finished playing in the fall, and then they had a chance to not even be eligible for the SoCon and for the FCS playoffs, and then that thing got fixed. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see the type of traction FCS football in the spring gets, because there are a ton of detractors to it, and I understand why. But the positives could outweigh the negatives in terms of exposure and revenue in the long run for FCS football if this spring football thing could work. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I'm just throwing it out there to see what type of traction it gets, what type of TV deals get landed. It's worth just keeping an eye on for the little guy to fill some space, TV-wise, revenue-wise. When there's a space to be filled, go grab it. Go own it.
124 here on a Tuesday afternoon. Real quick, by the way, the Citadel, remember the SoCon will play an 8-game schedule, and theirs will start Saturday, February 27th on the road in Macon against Mercer, and they'll be home their first home game the following Saturday, Chattanooga. The Mocs will be at Johnson Haygood Stadium on March the 6th. The rest of their schedule, of course, is available at citadelsports.com. Also, Charleston Southern here in the Low Country, if you remember, they are only playing a 4-game schedule as part of the Big South spring football schedule, I guess.
Yes.
And then their first one is on the road at Kennesaw State at 1 o'clock Saturday, March the 13th. So their start is a month later than when this actually all starts on February the 13th. They'll go to Kennesaw State. They got 2 home matchups, that Saturday the 20th of March against Robert Morris, and then Gardner Webb on April the 3rd on Saturday.
You can make a good weekend going to one of these FCS schools, especially down here in our region in the South. Combine it with like a baseball weekend, right? And go check out good baseball in the Southeast, whether it's SoCon or something else, and then go to a football game that's on campus too.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a fun weekend.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. I hope people will support the FCS programs here in the spring. Spring football is literally right around the corner for games that matter, and I'm with you. I hope that TV is able to carry many of these matchups, and I think that they will. I really do. I think that they certainly will. Speaking of the Citadel, we haven't been able to talk about them a whole lot, but we need to. They're 8-0 in basketball. They're 1-0 in the Southern Conference. This has been a special run to open the season, and I know that the non-conference schedule left a lot to be desired against who they were playing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that a few years ago, Duggar Balcom had even said to me, look, we need to schedule some games we can get momentum with around here at the Citadel. They were able to do that this year, but they did open the SoCon with that win over UT Chattanooga, scoring 92 points. They're scoring well in the 90s every time they hit the floor. And they're next on the court tomorrow night against Furman, a big time, or tomorrow afternoon against Furman.
Yep.
A big rivalry game at 3 o'clock. Furman is 2-0 in the league, 8-3 overall. So this is a huge game tomorrow for the Citadel.
A, massive rivalry. B, Furman is one of the best mid-majors in the entire country.
Yeah.
Side note to that, Duggar Balcom is one of my favorite coaches I've ever covered.
Mm-hmm.
He is as engaging and welcoming as any coach that I've dealt with. Him and Mike Young are at the top of that list for me. And I was a huge proponent of him getting the Citadel job because of what he was able to achieve at another military school up at VMI. It took him a while. It got really dicey last year, the year before that, but he's got a little bit of a formula now, bringing in some older transfer, like grad transfer point guards, and then kind of so that those guys can run his tempo the way he wants, and then developing some guys. And he's got a duo, Brown and Rice, are just they're good. It reminds me a lot of the 2010 season that I was the radio guy. They won 20 games.
Right.
Ed Conroy was the coach. It was the best season in Citadel history. At one point, won 11 straight games. I remember 4,000 plus 4,500 fans at McAllister for games against Wofford and Furman. And that place just rocking. So I hope the Bulldogs can keep this thing going. It's a good story.
But this is the game that people have kind of circled for Citadel basketball. If you can win this one, you've kind of arrived. You're maybe more of a contender than people might have thought. And they should by now have already played 4 games in the SoCon, but the UNCG, Western, and Mercer games were all postponed. So this is their first true, real test of the season. Of course, they did beat Chattanooga, who's got 10 wins this year as well, and Chattanooga's pretty good.
Chattanooga's a good team that's steeped in history. Remember, this Furman team came down and plastered the College of Charleston.
Yeah,
just destroyed him. It was a short week. They were supposed to play Richmond. The College was. Furman subbed in and came down and just housed them. It's a very good Furman team.
Real quick as well, some news in the SEC, and this is very interesting because of what is going on up there. Maybe setting himself up to just slide right in. I don't know. Former Auburn defensive coordinator Kevin Steele has agreed to a deal to join the Tennessee football coaching staff. He's 62. Of course, he was Auburn's defensive coordinator the last 5 years, was not retained by Brian Harsin. He was a guy who many thought at one point in time was directly in line to take over when they relieved Gus Malzahn of his duties, but he didn't. And now he is headed to Rocky Top to coach there. Now, what's interesting is they didn't say that he was hired to be the defensive coordinator.
Just joining the staff.
They just hired him to join the staff.
So it could be like DiMarco was just referencing that Ellis Johnson was like an analyst. There are some former coaches who have been. Sark was an analyst before he was elevated to offensive coordinator with Alabama. Maybe they're bringing Steele in as an analyst.
Well, I mean, look, I have my doubts that Jeremy Pruitt's going to make it out of this thing, let alone by the end of the week. If Kevin Steele's sitting there on your staff,
it was last week, the end of last week, where Tennessee was supposedly in a hiring
Well, that's
freeze.
what I was about to ask you. Well, I thought they were in a total hiring freeze here.
Right. So who made the hire? Did Pruitt make the hire or did Fulmer make the hire? I would assume, you would hope, Pruitt made that hire because he's joining the Tennessee staff. If Fulmer made that hire, then the writing is more than on the wall.
I don't know. Here's something that's really interesting. Auburn owes Steele more than $5 million from a deal that he signed in January a year ago. It's a guy who was the defensive coordinator. You want to talk about bad? Like, I know Carolina fans were just hammering Coach Tanner on the buyout for Will Muschamp and hammer a lot of these ADs for the buyouts that they have to pay. That's the nature of the beast in this league. Sometimes you just can't get around it. Here is Kevin Steele. Kevin's a defensive coordinator is owed over $5 million.
It's a lot.
Wow.
And is it still owed to him while taking another job?
I don't know.
Or is that mitigation clause in there?
I don't know, but how much can it mitigate?
I
mean, there's no way they're
depends
paying
on
him,
what's in the contract.
Yeah, and there's no way they're paying him even close to that to go to Tennessee right now and just join the staff. Not even a tenth of it.
No.
So that's just outrageous. Wow. All right, time for a timeout. When we return, some quick news on a big name for the Philadelphia Eagles job, and then we'll bring Gene Sapakoff into the conversation as well, right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes Meet Up.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
What's up, everyone? JB here. Want to tell you about my friends at McFadden Pest Control, as we do every day on our program. I love these guys. They've been in business over 40 years, and they treat our family like they've only been around for 4 days. Always doing their best work, trying to earn our business, although they know that they'll always have it. Heath and the guys take care of our quarterly, our mosquitoes, termite bonds, anything we can get them to do, they do it. They're the best. They're friends. Heath even often texts me and just asks to see how my family's doing. It's amazing. I can't say enough about McFadden Pest Control. Switch to them. You'll never have anyone else protect your home. McFaddenPestControl.com, McFaddenPestControl.com here in the Low Country.
Family Bingo Night is back. All 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and online.
Your love lifting me higher.
And he's telling the truth, because I know when Patrick listens, he'll send me a text and disagree with something I said. I could say the sky's blue, and he'd say, no, it's not. It's green.
Like, no, man, you should be over here. It's gray.
Yeah. Welcome back. 1:33 here on a Tuesday afternoon. Right to the phone lines we go, and that is where we find 7-time Sports Raider of the Year, the one and the only, the favorite guest of Paul Feinbaum, Gene Sapakoff. Hey, man.
Wow.
Wow, that's quite an intro. I don't know if I can live up to that.
Well,
so.
I just say, look, sometimes you got to hunt, you got to go with it, right?
Yeah.
But Gene here, we'll take you back down to earth.
Oh,
because,
sorry. Yeah.
Because Gene was defeated by Grace Rayner, the wonderfully talented for South Carolina Sports Writer of the Year.
Yeah.
Well, I can't lose in that battle because I didn't just preside over the hiring of Grace Rayner. I actually recruited her to come to the Post and Courier. She did not apply for the job.
Oh, so you had an eye on talent. She's a 3-time winner, and I don't think she's 30 years old yet.
No, that's true, and she is very talented. And I could see early on when she was an intern with MLB.com covering the Yankees is where she caught my eye while I was doing a story on the River Dogs. She actually commented on the story, and we started texting back and forth, and I saw some of her stuff, and I said, look, if we ever have an opening, you've got to apply.
Well, that all worked out.
Knowing that she's from the bustling burg of Morganton, North Carolina. So.
Well, it's a very popular destination these days, Gene. That's a great point. So your legacy will live on forever, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with that. I mean, that's exactly right. As well as she does, I don't have a percentage of her, contract receipts, but I should have, and I think you should ask her about that.
Yeah, finder's fee.
Who got that Cloninger guy over here? Was that you too?
Cloninger, I'd like to take credit for him, but he's been wanting to work at the Post and Courier for a long time before we got him, and I am glad we have it because that guy is a absolute bulldog who's all over everything Gamecock. So, we're very happy at the Post and Courier to have him covering the Gamecock.
Yeah, I texted Mike Uva yesterday. Mike got the first question in, I think maybe to Clayton White or one of those guys in the Zoom press conference, and I said, "Oh man, you just crossed DC. You take that first question away from him. That is bad news, bud. You better watch out." I don't think anything happened. I think he's okay.
I once asked the first question in a football presser, and he scowled at me. Wow, you better know the chipping order there on the first question thing.
That's right. Death taxes, and David Cloninger is going to get the first questions at a Gamecocks press conference. No question. All right. Well, he wasn't in the press conference last night with Saban, but Saban is now the best, right? Was he the best before he won that championship last night, Gene, or is this just cement that?
Yeah, he was the best. And I mean, it's just because he's winning in a more competitive environment now. And I know that when Bear Bryant and Woody Hayes and John McKay, et cetera, were coaching, that there were always 3 or 4 great teams, but there weren't 20 or 30 or 35 teams that could knock you off. I mean, look what happened to Nick Saban coming to South Carolina 28-10 in 2010. And I mean, there's just a lot more parity there in college football. And then, not to belabor this point, but for most of Bear Bryant's championships, it was a segregated environment. And he did win in an integrated environment too. But Nick Saban, I mean, I just think operating out of the most competitive division within the best league and then winning all the championships, 7 now, including 6 at Alabama, it's ridiculous. It'll probably never be matched.
No, I don't think so. And I hope he's got his thank you card in the mail to Steve Spurrier, because if folks don't remember, Bama called Spurrier and he said, "No, you need to call that Nicky guy down there, that Dolphins boy. You need to call him." It kind of worked out.
Yeah, and it's really amazing how all that stuff ties together, and that he won that title at LSU. I mean, people don't forget about that, but that was pretty amazing in itself.
Yeah, it was. It feels like it's a long time ago. I'm not ready to put this Alabama team at the top, the one we just saw complete the undefeated season. Already some are crowning them. Mac Jones thinks that they should be, and why not, the best team in college football history. They're in the conversation, Gene, but are they the best?
It's hard to say. I personally would put LSU ahead of them last year, and just because LSU beat a very good Alabama team at Alabama. The team that, Alabama beat LSU team was pretty much chopped liver this year. They did beat Texas A&M by 28 and crushed Notre Dame and got by a good Florida team in the SEC championship game, but I slightly would lean toward what LSU had to accomplish. And even beating Clemson, I think, was more impressive than what Alabama did with Ohio State last night, because Sermon went out on the first play. I thought that was going to be the key guy to the whole, path for Ohio State to get to victory. So that was just a huge loss. And you could just see the body language on everybody on Ohio State's sideline and on the field when he went out.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mentioned to Darren earlier, Gene, that Alabama this year beat 5 teams ranked 7th or higher, and they scored a combined total of 246 points in those 5 games. That is almost 50 points a game, Gene. It's remarkable. And
that's ridiculous.
It is. And I mean,
you're right.
These are the best teams in the country. When you look at this offense, and you just look last year at LSU's offense, I don't know that it's worth arguing about what was a better offense. Or I think they're both just the best 2 offenses we've ever seen in the sport. But comparably against what they played against, I mean, Alabama went 13-0 this year, all Power 5 teams. How do you compare what you saw offensively from the Tide this year? Heisman Trophy winner Devonta Smith, finalist Mac Jones, to last year's Heisman Trophy winner Joe Burrow, and the rest of those guys.
I'll give you Alabama's offense slightly over LSU's. I think LSU had a little bit better defense, I guess what I think. But I'll say this, Devonta Smith, what value? I mean, it was like watching some kids playing in the backyard, and they've got like the fastest or by far best or oldest kid in the neighborhood, and we're just going to get the ball to him all the time. You don't see that in major college football or the NFL, where one player is that much better than everybody else in an elite setting like that. It was ridiculous. I mean, the ways that Sarkisian found to get, just like, it looked like he's drawing up plays in the dirt, where like you're going to run in from the left and turn around when you get to the quarterback, and then we're just going to throw it to you. And I mean, that's just how talented that guy is. And I'd pick him in the first 5 picks in a second.
On Twitter at Sapakoff, Gene Sapakoff with the Post and Courier. I totally agree. And I'd like to kind of regurgitate. G.A. Mangus joined us on Friday, and I'd like to regurgitate something he said just about offenses in general. He said, look, great players can make any offense look really good. And as it pertains to last night's matchup, Gene, you mentioned everything that you just saw there, Sarkisian, his play calls. Obviously, he's got the best players in the country as well. But there were times, credit to Ohio State, where they did have Najee Harris kind of bottled up, and he just ran right through them. I mean, he just ran right through them, right down their throats, essentially, and we're able to get a bunch of first downs. And so when you combine those two, play call and best players in the country, I mean, I don't know that Ohio State could have had not one player out of that game last night, Gene. I don't know that it changed the outcome.
I think you're right. Alabama's offensive line is always the most underrated unit on a Nick Saban team. Those guys are really good, and you're going to see those guys in Pro Bowls going forward, and it does make it easier. But the skill position talent on Alabama, when you have 3 guys finish in the top 5 of the Heisman voting, and you're not even talking about Jalen Waddle as one of those guys, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like what I was saying before.
That's ridiculous.
It's unfair. You have 3 or 4 of the best, maybe 5 or 10 players in the country on one side of the ball for one team.
Right.
That's not fair.
No.
Before I want to get to South Carolina with you in just a moment, and then a couple of other things before I let you go. But let me ask you about the offseason. Is this the most important offseason in the history of college football?
You sure could say that. And it's going to be a lot of things, moving parts, and transfers and rules and name, image, and likeness. So many different things going on, and it's not even quite an off season, because some teams and conferences are going to be playing football. So it's just going to be crazy to see what we end up with, in those first, opening kickoff games of the 2021 season in the fall.
When you look back on this year, Gene, with the COVID, getting through the season, with Alabama performing the way that they did, what's the main takeaway of the 2020-2021 college football season?
A couple, but one is the Big 12, ACC and SEC, kind of in different ways, standing together for different reasons. Greg Sankey gets a lot of credit, and deservedly so, for maybe being a leader of this thing. But I'll tell you what, John Swofford pulling that ACC together was tough, because you don't have all these politically alike states in your conference. And I think that there had to be a time when the Pitts and Syracuses and Boston colleges of the world, that was tough to rein them into with the rest of the league, and even some of the schools in North Carolina. And then the Big 12 was a really key domino. I mean, they could have gone either with the Big 10 or Pac-12, and had they, maybe there was no college football. So that's key, how those things came together. And then I think at the end, Darren, empathy. I think just a lot of empathy for what Ohio State had to go through, for what players and coaches had to go through, and to finally get this thing to the finish line. You needed a lot of that, just as we do in regular society.
I agree, and I love the comments for John Swofford, and I agree with everybody in what they've said about Greg Sankey. He deserves a ton of credit. He was the steady hand, at least publicly, in all of this before it got started, this COVID-ravaged summer leading up to college football season. But John Swofford, everything you just mentioned, and let's also remember this, Notre Dame was a part of the ACC this year, and he deserves credit for that. And at the end of the day, that the ACC, because of bringing them in, they're going to have 2 top 5 teams more than likely in the final rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something else. I mean, it was the greatest ACC season ever up till now, and Swofford and Notre Dame deserve a lot of credit for coming together on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Gene Sapakoff on Twitter, at Sapakoff. All right, Gene, to South Carolina. It's almost all in place. I know there's one final on-field role to be decided. That's the offensive line coach for South Carolina, and from what I understand, we should probably expect something today, if not tomorrow, and then they'll start to finalize some of the off-field stuff, and they'll start moving forward like everybody else, hitting the transfer portal and trying to complete recruiting classes and things of that nature. One thing that I have noticed with Coach Beamer, and you saw some of this yesterday, not just with him, but also with some of his new hires, Marcus Satterfield would certainly be one that I would mention. I know that Shane has come off for a long time, and he is. You've interacted with Shane. We've interacted with Coach Beamer. He is a very nice guy. He's just a good man. Mm-hmm. He's a good person. He really is. But he's got a little bit of an edge to him here, Gene. And if you followed along the last few days, this timeline, Mike Bobo leaving, his comments at the press conference yesterday, that there's something's kind of ticked him off, and I think we kind of know what some of it is. But did you expect this edginess out of him after he was hired to be the head football coach of the Gamecocks?
I kind of did. And I'll tell you why, because I talked to him and dealt with him, someone who's on staff with Steve Spurrier. And if you've ever stood up next to him, he's not a big, physically imposing guy. Doesn't look like that. But dang, he played football at Virginia Tech. I mean, he was a tough dude. And was he the best football player? No, he'll be the first to tell you that he wasn't. But he was one tough SOB, and I think that's the tenacity. In fact, I remember talking to him on the floor of the Mercedes-Benz Dome at Media Day before Georgia and Alabama played in the 2017 national championship game for the 2017 season. It was in January of 2018. He was on Georgia's Kirby Smart staff then. And just that grit. And there were players around him that you could just really see admired that same kind of tenacity, for to repeat the word. I mean, that's how he's gotten where he is.
When you look at this staff, Gene, and I get it, I'm not naive to what some people think about what has transpired, especially at the coordinator roles. And there's a couple of names that just have not been familiar to fans, or for that matter, to media guys like you and maybe others. Clayton White, Marcus Satterfield, nobody really knew who they were until they got hired, and it'll be TBD, right? We don't know until we see it out there. But to this point, with what he's been able to add to this staff, what is just your overall impression of this group of coaches?
Okay, well, 2 thoughts. Number one, I think he likes Marcus Satterfield as his first choice ahead of Mike Bobo, and that he always did. I think, I can't say this officially. I don't have anybody on the record. I think Mike Bobo was not forced upon Shane Beamer, but hey, nudge, nudge, this would be good. Hey, this looks good. I think he's much more comfortable with Marcus Satterfield. Now, let's look at the staff. You have a head coach that's never been a head coach or a coordinator, and you have two coordinators who have never done their job at the Power 5 level. That is a weird, very strange, I'm not going to say unprecedented, but nearly unprecedented situation in the SEC. To have that combination of inexperience at your three most important jobs on the staff, for an objective person like me that covers college football, it's going to be fascinating experiment to watch. For a hardcore fan of the Gamecocks, it's going to be a bumpy ride for a few years to see if this experiment works out.
All right, Gene Sapakoff is with us. When he was hired, Beamer, one of your questions was about the finances that would support that hire and with the assistant coaches. So now as you're seeing this all play out, what's your sense of the finances with the Gamecocks? Enough to be competitive? Is it enough, I guess, in terms of what Beamer would want, or what's necessary?
Well, with every person that's introduced, like Clayton White and Marcus Satterfield, boy, they sure sound impressive. But if you would have been told, here's your staff, the day Beamer was hired or before they hired Beamer, I think you'd be pretty disappointed that there aren't some very experienced big names in there, especially when both Beamer and Tanner went on record with me, which is to the whole world in that Zoom conference, that, yeah, we've got clearance to spend a lot of money on this staff. They haven't spent much money at all on the head coach or on the staff. So hopefully, and this is one thing I do think they're going to do, is load up on analysts. But frankly, that's just to catch up because Will Muschamp just had a couple. And so they're just going to do what everybody else does. But I'm impressed with each individual. I'll say that. It's going to be interesting to see how quickly they can kind of come together and mesh.
Yeah. We just spoke with Pat DiMarco a while ago, and he mentioned that there used to be four. You mentioned the analysts. There used to be four. Will Muschamp eliminated two of those positions, and there were only two. And I think that he's trying to increase that number again, and maybe fill some of those roles with qualified former players. I've heard a couple of really, really, really good names actually that could be in line for some of those positions, and we'll see how it all unfolds. The comment yesterday from Marcus Satterfield about SEC retreads. Shane Beamer said, look, within 24 hours, I could have hired a bunch of former head coaches and stuff like that, and this staff would have been complete. Do you think that those were just from the heart comments in the moment, or do you think they had more intent behind a couple of those messages?
Oh, I think he anticipated the kind of questions that we probably were going to ask. And that, I did ask in advance, almost like, hey, are you going to hire some big time, people and spend some money? And his answer is that I'd rather have people I'm more comfortable with and that are hungrier. It maybe makes sense. We'll see. Like I said, I really like the guys when they're introduced and they talk. You can be pro or con about what you think about each of the individuals and stuff, but I think that he wants a staff he's really familiar with. They're very similar in age, these guys, and it's really going to be, it's really like Moneyball. I mean, I don't know that Ray Tanner put it together this way and on purpose, but they're spending a lot less and finding inexpensive options, almost like the Oakland A's did in the early 2000s. And we're going to see how this works in the SEC against the New York Yankees / Alabamas of the world.
That's a nice comparison. I like it. They don't have that little chunky curly headed guy walking around, but yeah, no, I agree with you. And there is a little bit of a comparison to what Shane is building in this staff here. And if you go back to what Coach Spurrier eventually kind of built into his staff, his first staff at South Carolina was less than impressive, Gene, and you probably remember a lot of those names. But as time went on, he added names of guys who had great South Carolina ties, really wanted to be there, like Sean Elliott from Camden, South Carolina. Beamer was one of them. Ellis Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at this. You got Kimry, you got Justin Stepp, and let's not forget Des Kitchings. He's a South Carolina guy, and you got Beamer himself. They're not all – you can't do that. Like, if there's a fan out there, I don't care what school you pull for, and you think, we just need to fill our coaching staff out with all guys who played football here because that's what it needs. That's impossible. You can't do that. but you can find the right fit for guys who understand your program and your state. And I feel like there's a similarity to what Shane is doing here and what Steve did kind of halfway through his career at Carolina.
I think so. Shane even said, there's going to be some stops and starts, or I've already made. He didn't say mistakes, but I'm going to have to be learning on the job, basically, is what he said yesterday. And I think everybody understands that, and he needs a longer rope than usual. Now, I will have to say that, if you're talking about a 4, 5, 6-year rope, it's going to be interesting to see if the people that were in charge of hiring him, Ray Tanner and Bob Castlin, are there at the end of that, because then, the mood could change a little if things aren't going pretty well. But it's going to be exciting one way or the other. And I don't know, it really depends on how this transfer portal goes for Shane Beamer, but the talent that he puts on the field next September, is going to not be in the top 2/3 of the SEC. So you're going to just have to understand that this is going to be a process, even though he specifically said yesterday, this is not a rebuild.
Yeah. I think point very well taken there, Gene. I did get a text last night from somebody I trust who said, the transfer portal this week could be quite kind to South Carolina, so we'll keep an eye on that. As somebody I really trust when he says stuff like that.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think South Carolina is just built for the transfer portal right now. You're telling guys you can play in the SEC against this kind of schedule, and you can start, you can play. I mean, I think they have a chance to do as well in the transfer portal in this cycle as any school in the country.
I agree. Gene, good news for you. Fred Ridley is going to allow you to come this year to the Masters. Oh, wait, you were just there. No, they're going to conduct the 2021 Masters, which is hard to believe it's right around the corner. They just played this thing, but limited attendance will, as of now, be available in April. And I just wanted to get your comparison. You were there without any attendance in November. I don't know what limited attendance necessarily will mean, but the Masters will at least have fans back on the grounds.
That's going to be great, because as much fun as I had walking around the whole Augusta National by myself in a competitive round, which was, bizarro world, it was really sad. I mean, it was just sad. Like, hey, here's Brooks Koepka, here's Tiger Woods and Rory, and where's the fans? I mean, I've been to a lot of Masters. I have family in the Augusta, North Augusta area, and it's just, I know how much it means to those people that have gone to the Masters from the Low Country, from Aiken, from Columbia, from everywhere. Just how much it means to them every year. And it was sad not to see anybody there virtually. So I'm glad they're hopefully going to have some, fans, and hopefully more even than they think they can have now, because things would theoretically get better. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm. What are we going to look for in the paper throughout the week, Gene?
We have kind of a breakdown of the basketball season, the state of Palmetto State college hoops tomorrow, and then an analysis of Shane Beamer's staff on Thursday. And then I have a cool column on Sunday on Stingrays president Rob Concannon, who has gone back to college at the College of Charleston to get his degree that he never did get in college. And it's kind of a funny story of back to school. He hasn't pulled any frat pranks or anything, but he's kind of thinking about it.
Like Billy Madison type stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Hopefully he's slightly smarter.
Old Billy Concannon over there with the South Carolina Stingrays. Magnificent. The state of basketball, we're really looking forward to diving much more into that. It's fascinating. You got the Citadel undefeated. They got Furman tomorrow. Clemson's 12th in the country. Who saw all that coming?
Well, Coastal Carolina's in first place. Winthrop is 11-0. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you're right. And South Carolina can't play. They can't play.
But they're good when they play.
But they are.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that Texas A&M game was hopefully the snapshot of the future, because that team can go a long way if that team shows up some more.
I agree. We always appreciate you showing up on Tuesdays around here. You do an excellent job for the Post and Courier and for all of those that read it. Thank you so much, and we look forward to your next appearance on Feinbaum.
Well, thanks a lot, guys.
There you go, Gene Sapakoff joining us here on a Tuesday afternoon. Also, Deuce Staley is being pushed by Eagles players for the head coaching gig up there in Philly. We'll see what comes out of that, but Jeff Lurie, Eagles owner, says he is a candidate.
So is Lincoln Riley. Are they going to go the college route?
They're going Deuce. Deuce. Former Gamecock, of course, Deuce Staley.
Yes, he is.
Real quick on the handy dandy national what day is it calendar? It is National Curry Chicken Day.
Not a curry guy.
It is National Pharmacist Day.
Yeah, thanks.
It's National Shop for Travel Day. I don't know what that means. But most importantly, to my friend Michael Flint, I love you. It is National Kiss a Ginger Day. So if you've got a ginger in your life, give them a big old smooch before the end of the afternoon. How about that? All you single ladies out there, Michael Flint is available, and his lips are puckered. There you go.
Just don't tell his wife.
And he doesn't have one.
All right. There you go. Then he's available.
I'm throwing a free plug for my friend, ladies.
And he's got curls too.
He does.
And the curls are where it's at.
He's got a great curl going. Yeah, no doubt. Pat DiMarco does not. Neither does Gene. But they were wonderful for us here on a Tuesday afternoon. Thanks to both of our good buddies for hopping on the JB and Goldwater show. Don't forget patriotspoint.org to tour the museum whenever you can. Thanks to Darren, as always, for his fine work, and all of you for watching and listening to our program. And we're back tomorrow. JC Sherbert in an hour tomorrow. Boy, that's going to be fun.
Miss JC. It's been a while.
By the way, we'll have more to talk about tomorrow as it pertains to the game, guys. So you'll want to be around for that. For Darren, I'm Jamie. Have a terrific Tuesday afternoon. The JB and Goldwater show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.